Hey ink fans, this is Brian Goulet of the Goulet Pen Company and inknuvo.com once again, here to do a review of the ever famous Noodler's Black. This is probably, I would argue to say, it's one of the most popular fountain pen inks out there today. So maybe I will introduce a few of you to it, but a lot of you are probably familiar, or at least have heard a lot about this ink. So I may not be doing anything revolutionary here, but I'll at least share with you what my experience is with the ink. So let's go and check it out. Alright, we're checking out Noodler's Black. This is a classic color. By classic, I don't necessarily mean old. I mean color that a lot of people use, and it's a standby. It's a benchmark for a lot of different colors. It's often referred to as Noodler's Bulletproof Black. The official name is actually just Noodler's Black. But as you can see here, it says the only eternal black ink, bulletproof on cellulose paper, yet washes off plastic with water. Now, what this ink is all about, this is a cellulose reactive waterproof ink. So essentially what it means is when this ink touches cellulose, so you either have pulp-based paper or cotton-based, something like that, when it gets to that cellulose, it creates a permanent bond. It takes a little while to truly create a permanent lasting bond, anywhere between like 1 day and a week. But as soon as it touches the paper, it starts to become water resistant. It becomes permanent after a little bit of time. It's a good flowing ink. For the purpose of this review, what I used was my Lamy Vista. This is the pen that I keep pretty much inked up with this Noodler's Black all the time. So this is what I use to address a lot of my envelopes. This is what I use to make notes and just write general things that I don't necessarily want to get washed away. That's what I use with Noodler's Black. Fine nib I find to be, at least with the Lamy, to be kind of a perfect match for this ink. Now, this is Noodler's Black. With it comes in a 3-ounce bottle, very generous volume of ink. I use my Lamy Vista, the fine nib, on Rhodia 80-gram white dot pad paper. The smear test. This is kind of what I was talking about here before, where it'll bond but not instantly. There's quite a difference between 5 and 10 seconds. Between 10 and 30 seconds wasn't too huge of a difference. It probably needed another maybe 5 or 10 seconds and then it would have been perfect there. But really what happens is when I do my marks here, I'm creating a tick mark, and then when I lift off, it has a little bit of ink that's generously proportioned there at the bottom of my little tick mark as opposed to the top. So the top of the tick mark, you can see here, is dry at like 5 seconds. The bottom takes a little longer to dry. So if you're using a dry writing pen, this ink will actually work really well. Here's my drip test, which you can't even tell that I did one, because there's no water, there's no indication whatsoever, no smearing, that you can't even tell that I did a water test. But I did. I put 3 dots, just like I do with all my other reviews, but it stood up great. I left it on there for like a minute or 2. I didn't count exactly, but it was quite a while because I kind of just left it on there to see if it would do anything. Took it off, didn't affect a gosh darn thing. So this is like passes with flying colors on my drip test. The swabs, my saturation, literally, you can't tell the difference between my first, second, and third swab. Just, you know, this is a black ink. No gray shading to it whatsoever. Dry time, 30 plus seconds. It's kind of on the long side if you're using it on Rhodia paper. Now, I have used it on other papers like Moleskine and some, you know, copy paper, where it has done a lot better in terms of the dry time. That's actually another point with this ink where it does a lot better, is if you're using it on real cheap paper where it has a tendency to feather and bleed really bad. This ink is one of the ones I highly recommend. Saturation level is very, very high. As you can see here by that, just it almost looks like it took a black Sharpie and just wrote across it. Very high saturation. Water resistance, incredibly high. Ease of cleaning, medium. Maybe I should have put medium high, or sorry, medium to difficult. Because it's a waterproof ink, it has a tendency to want to hang around in your pen a little bit, so you got to do a few extra flushes. It's not going to create so much a problem, it's just you got to do a few extra flushes and stuff. Maybe use a mild detergent if you have to, mixed in with your water, but that's something you should be aware of. You know, I tend to keep it inked up in one pen for a longer period of time. That way I don't have to clean it as often. You still got to do regular maintenance on your pen. I wouldn't recommend going any longer than probably a month without cleaning your pen. It's better to go more like a week, but I don't do a week on myself, so I can't tell you that that's what you're supposed to do. But anyway, just be aware of that. Shading is low. Basically, I should have said none, because there is no real shading at all. It's almost like you're writing with a Sharpie pen or something. And the flow is wet. This is kind of a wet writing ink, so you're going to get maybe a little bit thicker line than you would, but it's not uncontrollable. It's still a very nice controlled ink. Handles really well on cheap papers, and it's one that I would most certainly recommend. And I know a lot of others would stand behind me for a good all-around black ink. And I almost forgot, I wanted to compare the different blacks that there are to Noodler's Black. I got some swabs here that I can show you. Noodler's Black, probably the closest comparable ink to it is Noodler's Heart of Darkness. These two are very, very close. They often are interchanged one for the other. They're both really good about not feathering on cheap paper. So that would definitely be one I'd recommend as an alternative. Noodler's Bad Black Moccasin. That's like Noodler's Black on crack, basically. It was developed as part of the Warden series to be laser proof. Yes, laser proof. Noodler's X Feather is another one. That's a really thick ink. It's a little bit thicker than the Noodler's Black. And that was made not to feather on inexpensive paper. Now, it doesn't necessarily work on all papers, but it is much better than most in terms of not feathering. Now, the reason I'm comparing all these blacks, there's a lot of different blacks out there. I mean, a ton of different black inks. But all of the ones that I'm showing you here is comparable to Noodler's Black. It's because the inks are all permanent or waterproof to some degree. Let's see here. What else we got to compare? Some non-Noodlers. Let's go with Private Reserve Invincible Black. That one is a pretty good one as well. Doesn't flow quite as well as Noodler's Black. It tends to build up a little bit on the nib, but it's really, really good in terms of waterproofness. And it is very, very dark. Now, Platinum Carbon Black and the Sailor Kiwaguro Nano Black. These two are really dark as well, but these two are pigmented inks. So these are going to be a little bit harder to clean out of the pen than the rest of these. Generally speaking, it's a little more work to clean any waterproof ink out of your pen, just as kind of a general rule, but the pigmented ones are going to be the hardest because you're actually dealing with very, very fine pigments in the ink themselves. The rest of these are just dye-based inks. So anyway, hopefully that's good comparison for you to check out some other blacks that are close to Noodler's Black. But, you know, for me personally, Noodler's Black is really tough to beat. This is actually the only ink that I have myself, the only black ink that I have in a full bottle. Normally I just use samples because, you know, obviously I have access to a lot of them. But this is one that ink that I use so much that I keep inked up in my Vista pretty much all the time. That it's one that I keep in a full bottle, and for good reason. So I think you'll see that I'm not the only one out there that supports Noodler's Black wholeheartedly. That's all for my review of Noodler's Black. If you have any questions, you can always email me at brian@gouletpens.com. Thanks a lot, and write on.